evening and welcome to the City of Pasco Council Workshop. The council thanks you for being part of the city government. At workshops, the council discusses issues, but no formal action is taken. Agenda packets are available on the City of Pasco's website at www.pasco-wa.gov/agenda, and they can be found at the back of the room. This meeting is being televised live on PSC-TV channel 191 on Spectrum Cable in Pasco and Richland, and is streamed on the city's Facebook page, website, YouTube channel, and GoToWebinar. This and previous council meeting video is available on the city's website. Lastly, the public may submit their comments and or questions by contacting the city manager, city clerk, or by using the Ask Pasco app. And with that, can I get roll call, please?
Council members Brown,
Present.
Campos,
Present.
Milne,
Present.
Roach,
Present.
Serrano,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney,
Present.
and Mayor Barajas.
Present. And with that, would you please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. And moving on with our agenda, rolling on over to item number 4. Any verbal reports from council members? Did anybody attend any special events they wish to share?
Oh,
Councilman Brown?
good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. The updates I have is I attended in support of Councilman Milne over to Penske's ribbon cutting on Friday. We've been so many places. I'm trying to think where we are. On Friday, it was a nice visit, wonderful facility. I think it's going to be a great addition to the city of Pasco. Wonderful facility, looks very, very nice. So that was a great opportunity. So I was proud to cover for Councilman Milne. He couldn't make it, but I was glad I was able to do so. And then, of course, we'll all probably talk about Cinco de Mayo. That was also a blast. I was able to then cover for Councilman Maloney right at the last hour. So it was just a weekend of covering. So, I mean, that's how awesome we are on the council. So I was able to do that and do the opening of the festivities after the parade ride and had a good time chatting with City Manager Lincoln. So the council was busy all weekend. So it was a positive thing. So just want to tell you thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
Thank you. Yeah, a couple things. Councilmember Brown, again, I want to thank you for my daughter and myself both had allergy attacks after the parade, and we needed to go home and wear that and shake that off. So I appreciate you being able to step in for me when I was supposed to be stepping in for the mayor. So appreciate your rallied support and helping with those opening remarks. Mayor, I'll defer to you on the conversation about the Belia training facility. I think that you'll be best to speak to that. Let's see, what else to do? Obviously, attend the parade. But the other thing I want to talk about just briefly is the Pasco Taco Crawl has completed its 7th year. It was Powell's Inferno, the new business with the gentleman who's come here to talk to us, working out of the specialty kitchen, serving out of one of those windows there. This was the most tacos that have ever been redeemed. Normally we're 50 to 55%. This was closer to about 65%, so about 10% more tacos consumed per taco crawler than we've ever seen before. So great news for people who want to come down to downtown businesses and Pasco businesses and check them out. So that event continues to be a really positively received event, and yeah, specialty kitchen member 1 on this year. So I think that's something to be to really, we should take a lot of pride in having that facility available for businesses who are trying to get rolling and trying to reach out in the community and may not be able to bring that product in a full restaurant fashion right out of the gate. So, and I think that's all I got. Thank you.
Councilman Milne?
Thank you, Mayor. Today I did attend the Pasco Chamber of Commerce, and it was a very good luncheon. We did hear from the Washington Policy Center, talking about all the issues that are affecting our state from the legislation. And anyway, I don't want to get into it because we got a long meeting, but it was a really good talk, and it's important to be informed of what's going on in the Senate and the House and what our governor's doing. So I would just say, just anybody out there, just try to keep involved because there's a lot going down. So thank you.
Any other council members wish to share any events in particular attended? Maybe hunting? Okay. All right, so I will share just a little bit. Councilwoman
Mayor,
Roach.
may I?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and I apologize. I think there tends to be a delay between council chambers and myself, and so it ends up seeming like I'm interrupting you, and I'm not meaning to do that. So just apologies in advance for that. Just wanted to say that I was really bummed out that I could not attend in physical presence the Cinco de Mayo parade, but I did send 3 ambassadors from my household to do the Pledge of Allegiance, both in English and Spanish. So Cub Scout Troop 100 did that Pledge of Allegiance bilingually, and I got some great pictures out of it. So just wanted to report that back.
Thank you, Councilwoman Roach, and thank you for sending your very special ambassadors to represent. Any other council members wish to share? I'll go next. So we did definitely have a very busy weekend with festivities with Cinco de Mayo. But before that, Friday, I was able to briefly meet with Governor Inslee's staff. Jacob and Adam were there with myself to meet with Governor Inslee regarding the issues of homelessness and what is Pasco doing. So we definitely had some support there as well from our policy makers. So it was a good conversation. I hope the conversation went to where we can get more funding. And right after that, we ran over to the new, Pasco's very brand new training center. We have Office Detective Sergeant, but I'm sorry, I'm not sure your title. If you wish to share a little bit more, but what I do want to say is that in Eastern Washington, this is one of, or the only, correct me if I'm wrong, the only training center. The only training center in Eastern Washington to give more opportunity to bring down those barriers to anyone interested in participating and being part of our very elite police department here in Pasco. Like I said, at the opening ceremony, my views are biased. Our Pasco Police Department has been great in our community. We have a great response from the community in general to our officers. There's high involvement in making solid relationships with our community and our officers. And so it's just an honor to be there standing next to legislators and senators that were supporting opening a new training center. Would you like to share a little bit more about the importance of having the academy close by?
I certainly can.
If you can press your mic button, thank you.
Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a big deal for us, for our region, and for our state. We are now a model for the initial intent is to open 2 more regional academies across the state, one in Vancouver and another one possibly in Skagit County. So it is an honor for Pasco to be chosen first to open this up. They put a lot of faith in us after coming down and visiting and seeing what we were all about. They liked that we were dual accredited, that we maintained professionalism, and they looked at our training program and saw that we had regionally the the caliber of instructors to pull an academy off. And so I will say we absolutely didn't do it alone. So many of the city departments have stepped up to help us, and the support of the council, of course. And now we have state support through the governor and legislature. So they funded us really well. So I think we're going to be able to pull this thing off. And today was actually day one of the academy. Had ribbon cutting on Wednesday, and today was day one. And I was down there with 30 new recruits who showed up today, and we're really excited to start their career. So we're glad to be a part of this, and we have high hopes for it.
And how many recruits do we have currently?
30.
30. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that update. So again, very proud and very honored to have this training center in Pasco. And I did misspeak there. I said Friday, but it was on Wednesday. My week was just a little crazy. The other thing, Friday, moving on to Friday, and I will come back to you. Do you want to say a comment regarding
Well, I
this?
just want to know if welcomes or drop-ins are welcome, or if that's destructive or just, disruptive of the process.
Certainly. We'd like to have you come by and see what we're doing. It's a busy schedule. There's a lot going on. If you have the opportunity to schedule with us, we'd love to bring you by. If you just drop by, we'll certainly accommodate you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for that question. So I do want to add too that we have trainers from Seattle, Wenatchee, Kennewick. Really, there's a lot of support from all across the state to make sure that the curriculum, if I'm not mistaken, the curriculum is updated, revamped, and according to our current situation. But yes, we are. One of the words that was used by one of the senators was "wow." He just couldn't stop saying "wow." So that's just small word, but really wow. Duly accredited police department. So congratulations to that. Was also a guest speaker or keynote speaker for the League of Women Voters on Friday. Several hundred showed up from outside of Pasco, flew in. So it was spoke about the growth of Pasco, our key growing economy. Some of those venues that are growing, expanding, Amazon, Bounty, local Bounty, and the diversity of our community, which was something that they really wanted to hear about the redistricting and how it allowed for diversity in our council. So I was very proud to share the redistricting that allowed for myself and several other council members now to be in seat. And so after my speech, they gifted me the bright yellow rose, which, and I did a little bit of more research on that bright yellow rose. It is given to, the color stands for purity and hope, respectively, and was used during parades. So this is given to women by the Women's Suffrage Association. So for strong voting rights supporters. So I was the proud recipient of a yellow rose. Let me see what else. Oh, I just want to say congratulations to the Taco Crawl. I did buy 2 booklets. However, my week was busy and I did not use any. So there's a good donation there. I think that's all I have to share. No, that's not it. I do want to share that I was not at the first year. I have not participated at the Cinco de Mayo because my son graduated from WSU Pullman with a bachelor's in physics. One of 11.
Congratulations, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman Roach. One of 11 recipients of the astrophysics bachelor's degree. So I was crying out there. So couldn't cry here at the Cinco de Mayo. But thank you, everyone who stepped up to support my absence. I appreciate that.
And thank you for making sure you mentioned that. I was going to call you out. If you didn't, we'd be remiss. It's a heck of an honor.
Yes,
You know,
thank
you have good kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other reports from any other council members? Anything else, Councilwoman Roach?
Nothing else for reports here. Thanks for asking.
Thank you. So moving on to item number 5 on our agenda, items for discussion. We have the ordinance amending PMC Title 25 related to retail sales of cannabis. And I will turn it over to Mr. Gonzalez.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. On March 6th, council provided staff with direction to prepare a resolution to prepare a draft ordinance establishing the commercial industrial zoning districts for the inclusion of retail sales of cannabis within city limits. The draft ordinance has been prepared and attached to the staff report along with 2 maps you should have in front of you that illustrate the buffered areas along with the zones for industrial and commercial uses or zoning districts. And with that, I'll pass this on to Mr. Ferguson for further discussion.
Great, thank you. And so, yeah, just a quick overview. We've talked about this subject a couple times, so we'll go ahead and keep it limited here. The ordinance does focus on C1, C2, C3, I1, I2, and I3 zoning districts as allowable for retail sale of marijuana, cannabis. And so with that, there is no, let me just highlight a couple of things. There is no reduction of any of the statewide buffers that start out. There is a process for that that we would need to follow in the RCW to be able to reduce those buffers. The only buffers that we cannot reduce are related to schools, both elementary and secondary, as well as playgrounds. So those are the only 2 that can't be reduced to the minimum of 100 feet. Everything else is up for a potential reduction in buffer size. This ordinance does contain a limitation on stores. That is a simple provision that is in there. Certainly by no means, that's just based on some of the conversations. We thought it would be easier for you to see it in there and take it out if that's something that you don't want. But there is a little uncertainty with regard to the number of stores. And when I say that, what I mean is currently, the current situation is the amount of allotment. So there currently is, the last I check, or actually Mr. White, when he was here, last time we were able to look at these, the latest information we have was, I believe, at the end of last year. So I believe this is accurate still, but we can certainly follow up and make sure. But nothing has changed in the interim. But currently, it looks like there is 1 at-large license for Franklin County, and there are 4 available for Pasco. So that appears to be a 5 total for Franklin County. Obviously, 4 of those would have to be related to Pasco. So the 1 at large could also still be in Pasco. So the concern or the new program that has been developed, the Social Equity License Program, is new. It's just now being implemented. They're not anticipating issuing any licenses until around March or late spring, or they had originally thought March, but it would be late spring or early summer. And it's not clear yet exactly how that program is going to be implemented. The way it is currently structured, the Social Equity Program is looking for licenses that have not been utilized, and then looking for locations to be able to allow those in areas where there's currently bans. Now, there are 44 licenses that have been distributed or that have been allotted through LCB. Those are statewide, and so it's not clear yet if the program could morph into licenses being able to go from county to another county. I don't want to talk out of school and say that I know anything in particular about that, but with regard to the program, it is a statewide program, and there is a statewide number of licenses. Just belt and suspenders, we put the limitation in there just to make sure that in case you wanted to limit the number of potential licenses, you would already have that in place. You wouldn't have to come back and do that after it was implemented. So with that, the only other thing that I did want to bring to your attention was towards the end of the ordinance, there are no cooperatives allowed. That's something that you can specifically ban per the state statute. So those are not currently in this ordinance, and neither is production or processing. So it is only related to retail sales. So with that, we're happy to try to answer any questions. And if we can't, we'll try to find you the answers between now and come back.
Mr. Ferguson, this is Councilmember Roach, and I just wanted to get a clarifying question in about the equity license. That application doesn't open till 2024. I heard you saying spring, but is that till next year?
No, ma'am. What I most recently read was that we've already been receiving inquiries from the program, as well as we've actually had some folks apply for a city license that were related to the social equity license. So as my understanding from what I just read through today is it appears that those licenses are going to begin to be issued in late spring or early summer of 2023. But I'm happy to stand corrected if that's not the case.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Councilman Milne?
Yeah, Mr. Ferguson, I was just wanted to clarify on the playground aspect with the parks. Is that like a buffer zone around just the playground or the whole park? Obviously, like Chiawana has multiple playgrounds. Is it the whole park then, just for clarification?
Well, that's a good question. So the way that the line, and I'll try to turn this over to Jacob or Mr. Gonzalez as well, because this is an interesting issue. The line, what I can tell you is the defined facilities, the way that it's measured is from the property line from the establishment to the property line of the, I guess, the buffered facility. So the way it's currently structured is playgrounds are distinguished separate and apart from parks. So I don't know to what degree that line, and you raise a really interesting point there, is that when you have several playgrounds inside of a larger park, is the entire area included? That we can certainly take a look at that. But yeah, that question with regard to another definition for recreation centers just popped up, and we'll certainly try to find that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Councilman Serrano?
Yeah. I'm going to try to speak in turn here. I've obviously opposed this since day one, and quite frankly, I think we're doing a huge disservice discussing this and not even addressing the fact that the legislature may or may not go back into special session and may or may not fix the Blake decision. I think we owe it to our community to shelf this discussion and address what needs to be addressed, which is consumption and utilization of illicit and illegal drugs. And I know, in speaking to both our police chief as well as our sheriff, who have both testified on this issue, they're concerned about, whether it's anecdotal or not, the gateway component of this, of marijuana consumption and utilization throughout our city. So again, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we shelf this conversation and we address the Blake concerns. And if we so choose, we can just address that. I know we have some stuff teed up on that, but I know we're not fully ready. But bottom line is our community needs our help, especially in the actual illicit drugs, and we need to have that conversation. So I'm going to move to table this discussion and replace it with discussion on the Blake.
Any further comments? Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
Sorry, I'm not making a motion. I'm not going to second.
Councilman Brown?
Just a question to Mr. Ferguson.
Just real quick, we do have a motion on the floor, so
Oh, okay.
if it's related to that, then
I guess I'll second it.
So if there's a motion, there's a second.
Is there room for some discussion since there's been a motion and a second?
Yes, Councilwoman Roach. Do you have a comment?
Yes, I do have, I would like to weigh in right now because I feel like the past year, there's a comment that was made by Councilmember Serrano. The motion and the comment that was made by Councilmember Serrano is one that I want to comment on. And that is that this last year we have learned an incredible amount from our community on this topic. People who are social workers, people who are resource navigators, police, business owners, individuals who recreationally use and as well as use for medicinal purposes. And as someone right now who literally is taking prescription opioids for a major joint replacement surgery, I can tell you that it has damaging effects and that it is a drug prescribed by doctors. And I'm observing the downside effects of what that does do to a person's body, a person's energy, mood, all of those things. And so it's very relevant to me right now that some of the comments that have been brought forth to us just by the community from those people who are suffering from chronic pain, cancer, things like that. As I have talked to my own surgeon, primary care provider, and asked them, what can I do right now? Because I am having a considerable amount of pain in this post-operative recovery, and I do not want to take these opioids that are also making me feel like utter crap. And the option that they have presented is that cannabis is a non-habit forming alternative to prescription medication. And so I just want to say that it's not something I've taken them up on at all. Extra strength Tylenol all the way, and it's, halfway getting me there. But I now can appreciate at a level of empathy that I hadn't before some of those comments that people were making to us in our council chambers and at those listening sessions, that for some people, this cannabis store essentially is like a pharmacy in that they can choose to use something that is non-habit forming, that does not destroy their life and create further addiction. And so I will not be supporting this motion at all and would like to get back to the topic at hand.
Okay. Any further comment? Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
Thank you, Mayor Barajas. And well said, Councilmember Roach. And in addition to that, this is an issue that we as a body have decided on. And so this comment that somehow we're going to reopen something that we have passed and to just defer the hard work that that staff has done to bring this forward at our direction is, I think, a poor use of our time and our resources. So I will not be supporting this motion, and I look forward to continuing this conversation and moving forward the business of the city.
Any further discussion?
Again, I'll just kind of refer to Mr. Ferguson here. I don't want to get too much into all this because we know what it can erupt. What Councilman Serrano brought up regarding the Blake decision and I'm going to say the zoning of this map I'm looking at. Where are we sitting as a city, or are we going to discuss that right now?
Well, it depends. Those are really distinct issues. There's obviously some interrelation, but the Blake concern, and I'm using that generically, is related to the ability for after July 1 for local law enforcement to be able to enforce and to be able to, quite frankly, have a whole host of drugs under RCW 6950 that are currently illegal maintain their ability to stay illegal and to be able to arrest for possession of those. That will go away after July 1. And so essentially drugs in any form will, as defined in 6950, will be not illegal to possess after July 1. So there's a serious push both in Olympia and statewide for local governments to have something in place so that illegal drugs stay that way and that law enforcement is still able to enforce that. Now, there's a distinction, obviously, between that situation and what we're talking about with cannabis. Cannabis is based on I-502 and subsequently additional legislation is legal to possess in certain amounts. And so the Blake issue wouldn't really start to have any effect on this issue until you have a certain amount over the legally allowed amount currently. So it could have some effect. This could have some effect in terms of there would not be a potential prohibition on the amount of possession. Now, we don't even want to get into the kind of definition of how much would be considered more than personal use, and so therefore it would be distribution under different statutes, which would be much different than possession. So it can get complex, but there's some obviously some connection. But there are what this is attempting to do is take away the current ban in the city of Pasco to allow retail sales of cannabis in certain zones as allowed by state law, with some further restrictions that the city, in our opinion, is allowed to place on that retail sale. So there's some connection, but I need a little more to know what exactly maybe you're after there.
I think we're going to have an executive session. I may just throw it out there just for a second or two. No major disturbances tonight. We'll talk about it later. Thank you.
Thank you. With no further Councilman Campos.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just was going to weigh in. I think if we deliberate too much on this topic, I think it basically serves the purpose of essentially workshopping the Blake decision. And so with that said, I'm not going to mitigate or try to minimize how important it is. I think that we have future discussion with staff to look at future ordinances. So right now, I just want to call the question.
Thank you. With no further discussion, there is a motion, there's a second, and we'll do a roll call vote.
All right. Councilmember Serrano.
Yes.
Councilmember Campos.
No.
Councilmember Brown.
I want to just clarify something here. So I know we're going to talk about this, but there's some questions still left that I need answered before moving on this. I know where I stand, but there's still some questions. So how do we address that part?
You can address that in as the issue is on the table, but the current issue on the table and up for a vote currently is to table this discussion.
So the motion is to table the item A.
No, not at the moment. We still need to discuss it.
So that's a no.
Yes.
Councilmember Milne.
Yes.
Councilmember Roach.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
No.
And Mayor Barajas.
No.
So that's 2 against 5 for. So it's passed.
Thank you. So we will move forward with our agenda.
Yeah.
2 for and 5 against. Sorry.
Got it. We'll move on with our agenda. Is there any further discussion regarding the ordinance amending PMC Title 25 related to retail sales of cannabis? And again, Councilman Campos.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just, something that has been asked of, I think, from staff for more clarity, and I want to weigh in on is potentially shrinking some of the boundaries. And I just, look at Peanuts Park and what is designated as, a lot of this discussion originally looked at putting or having a business in the downtown as an incubator, right? And by kind of shrinking that boundary, I think we'd be doing a service to the downtown corridor. Case in point, there's this fella that I've seen, I'm sure Thomas Grambois has seen him as well. He'll walk through the neighborhood without a backpack. 20 minutes later, he's got a backpack on, and he'll make that trip several times during the day. And I think that, again, there's a lot of reasons why having an incubator in the downtown corridor could alleviate some of that issue. But Peanuts park, in my mind, is less of a park. It doesn't have a playground. To me, I would look at it as a plaza. And I don't know if that definition would help give anything or opinion, but for me, that's what I look at it as. I wouldn't see it as a park in and of itself. You could call it a business park, but I don't know where our code specifically spells it out, but I don't see it as that. That's all.
Thank you. Councilman, Brown?
I just forget.
Okay.
If we'd like a little clarification on the park, playground distinction, those are in the WAC based on the LCB's ability to implement the statute. And playground, just because the original question from Councilmember Milne is related to means an outdoor playground means a public outdoor recreation area for children, usually equipped with swing, slides, and other playground equipment, owned and or managed by a city, county, state, federal government, or metropolitan park district. A public park, on the other hand, it means an area of land for the enjoyment of the public, having facilities for having facilities for rest and or recreation, such as baseball diamond or basketball court, owned and or managed by city, county, state, federal government, or metropolitan park district. Public park does not include trails. And then related specifically to the previous question of distance, the way the ordinance is currently drafted, and it's based on the state law as well, is the measurement of the separation of distance in subsection 2 above shall be measured as the shortest straight line distance from the property line of the applicable cannabis retail facility to the property line of the entities / uses listed in subsection 2. So based on that and these definitions, Mr. Milne's question, and I can certainly verify this, but my first impression is it's going to be related to the property line. If there's a playground associated in a property line, it's going to be, that buffer's not going to be able to be reduced. So if it's part of a...
I see some nods from Jacob over here.
Okay.
Do you want to clarify just before we go to you, Councilman Campos?
No, I would agree with Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney, your comment first, and then we'll go back to you.
It was still about the designation.
Please, I defer to you.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. So, Mr. Ferguson, based on that, on my question about whether or not Peanuts Park then identifies as an actual park itself, of having no baseball diamonds, courtyard as far as like basketball courts or Foursquare even, would redesignating it or renaming it essentially as a plaza serve the same purpose as shrinking the boundary? Would we even need to put a boundary around it?
I think it would be tough because the way it's defined, it's the first part that I think really would include Peanuts, is related to means an area of land for the enjoyment of the public, having facilities for rest and or recreation, and then it says such as. So that first part of the definition is really going to be the thing that I think applies to Peanuts because there's facilities related to rest and recreation. So I think that would distinguish it separate from like an open mall area or something that may not have facilities. But
yeah, because I look at it as the whole, right? Does it meet that definition as a whole? And I don't think that, while it has an open area that's for the enjoyment of people for rest and it's got bathroom in it, there's lots of other public places that have those things and they're not parks. It just, like I said, something in my mind I wanted to question. Regardless, that's just my personal opinion, how I look at it. I don't really think that it meets the definition of park, even if that's the definition of the WAC. So I'll just go ahead and yield, but that's my big sticking point.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. And that's a question I had. Actually had the definitions pulled up and was perusing them earlier for that, trying to get some clarity on some of those as well. Yeah, I think overall, Mr. Ferguson, I think this is pretty. I think it's well written. It's very short. There's not a lot of changes to allow this use. In terms of I would agree with Councilmember Campos that reducing the buffer, assuming that both the Peanuts Park and Peanuts Park North are classified as public parks. Well, under that assumption, I'd like to see those reduced, as well as there's a park right on the other side of, I believe, of the railroad tracks on the north end there that I hesitate to understand as a park. I'm not sure I've ever seen anyone using it as a park. Is anyone or everyone familiar with that facility?
Well, a couple things. One of the things that could be problematic with this is the fact that the city, and it sounds like in most of these cases, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but we actually refer to these as parks. So that's the part of the problem is we're calling them parks and we're treating them as such.
Sorry, I'm not arguing that point. I'm letting that one rest and saying with the assumption that these are parks that they're looking at reducing the buffer. There's the Peanuts Park as well as one park directly slightly northeast by about 4 or 5 blocks.
Great. Okay.
That I would also. I believe that particular park again is an underutilized park and is not using any playground equipment, so wouldn't fall under the playground definition. And I think that removing or lowering the buffer on that. But under the terms of definitions, that's an area that I'm a little bit concerned by as well, because these definitions I think are poorly written or broadly written in a way that is hard to, not the park one specific at this time, but if you look at recreation center or facility, means a supervised center that provides a broad range of activities and events intended primarily for use by persons under 21 years of age, owned and or managed by a charitable nonprofit organization, city, county, state, federal government, or metropolitan park district. So I can think of things like, if we wanted to have a cultural center in downtown, would very well fall under that, may very well fall under that, if depending on what the use of that facility is. If it's not, primarily intended for people over 21, maybe the Franklin County Museum maybe doesn't qualify for that. So I would, if we're talking about reducing buffers, I would suggest we look at multiple other types of facilities that were allowed to decrease the buffers, specifically around our core downtown area, not the entire C2 as recently expanded by this council, but looking at the Peanuts Park and that core downtown area that we've historically considered the C2 and area there. So recreation facilities, public transit center, things like that, I think would be prudent for us to reduce the buffer zone on as well. Final thing I'll say, Mr. Ferguson, is I had looked at this previously in terms of some other things that are in our code that may want to be updated at the same time as this. For example, our section on nuisance ordinances has the possession of cannabis as a nuisance by definition. So even just having it seems to qualify as a de facto nuisance, which is probably something worth updating given that.
Well, are you referring to the chronic nuisance portion of the code? Because I looked at, because I know that had been mentioned previously, and I looked that up before I got here, and it just mentions the distinction related to not otherwise allowed by Washington law. So anything that would be illegal under Washington law, now that's where we could potentially run into an issue with Blake, wouldn't qualify. But that was the only reference I saw to, we still have it marijuana in the code. That was the only reference I saw in chronic nuisances. Is there something in the actual nuisance section that you're referring to now?
Yes, section 9.90.040, specific nuisances. Item 17 reads, the possession or storage of marijuana or marijuana-infused products for personal use in any amount or for medical use with a state medical license in any amount greater than allowed by Washington state statutes or an amount in violation of any provision of Washington state statutes. That seems outdated right now, let alone.
Yeah, that's not even legal now. So
yes.
we'll take a look at it. I was looking in the chronic nuisance section and didn't see anything, so that's helpful.
And also section 19, which talks about the indoor storage, production, growing, method of use of any cannabis or I think marijuana or marijuana products. And it goes on for some more. Indoor storage obviously would need to be allowed for retail sale and personal use. The portions on production and growing, I have no suggestions to remove anything or change anything that just specifically related to indoor storage, things that are legal right now. Sure. That are still listed under our nuisance. It'd be important to clean these up.
Yeah, we'll definitely take a look at those. Oftentimes there's things either before or after it that could have an effect on it that we'll look and see whether it specifically applies to this. But yeah, we're certainly happy to make sure we're catching everything in one fell swoop. And
final comment I'll make is I don't see any reason for our city of Pasco to continue to try to restrict the number of licenses. We have the free market. I mean, the entire conversation, at least from my perspective, is free market and state are in control of this. And our job is to get out of the way at this point. So I believe that section is not necessary. So in the proposed ordinances, looking at the number of potential facilities. So those are my 3 points that I'd like to raise. Thank you.
Just real quick, while I still got you, the section you were referring to, did you mean Title 19 or was there, you said 19?
Under specific nuisances?
Yeah, it was the second one where you were talking about storage.
Yeah, 9.90.040 under specific nuisances, there's an enumeration of a whole lot of specific nuisances.
Yeah, got
17 and 19 are the two at issue.
Okay,
17,
great.
I believe, should be struck. 19 should be partially revised.
Gotcha. Okay, I thought you switched titles on me. Okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
Councilman Milne.
Thank you, Mayor. I had another question for Mr. Ferguson. We're talking about the schools. What about like school district buildings? I know I've seen like interns come in there. Does that, as far as, is that just missed or is that actually exempt from?
So the way schools are currently defined, let's run up to the top here. Elementary school is defined, means a school with a physical location for early education that provides the first 4 to 8 years of basic education and recognized by the Washington State Superintendent of Public Instruction. So that wouldn't include a district facility based on that definition. And then I believe secondary, I'm sure it's probably going to be pretty close to the same thing. Secondary school means a high and or middle school with a physical location, a school for students who have completed their primary education, usually attended by children in grades 7 through 12 and recognized by Washington State Superintendent of Public Instruction. So I don't think either one of those definitions would apply to a district building.
Okay, well, that answered the first question. And the second question I had is, when you look at all the different circles, if you reduced the size of the different parks that don't have a playground and the ones, and you left the circles the ones that did, or is there anywhere even in the downtown that could have, it seems like most of the circles are, how much would you have to reduce the park?
I'd have to defer to Mr. Gonzalez for that, but I will say this, the concern related to the reduction of buffers and zones is that the more specific you get, the more precarious it gets. And what I mean by that is if you want to reduce buffers, we know we can do that related to certain facilities. Then if we want to reduce buffers in certain zones, we are pretty sure we can do that. If we want to reduce buffers for certain portions of certain zones, now we're getting a little specific. And so it just gets a little more difficult to potentially defend if somebody would want to make some kind of claim that somehow the goal was to really focus on any particular arbitrary and capricious application of the law. So we just want to make sure that we're, I don't think it's going to be a problem, but I just, the more specific we get, the more legally precarious.
Okay, I know there's certain business owners in the downtown, and it just seems like with these blue circles, there really isn't a whole lot left. So then if you had some playgrounds in there, it seems like there's really nothing. Then it would seem that all the marijuana shops would go out on 68 or parts of Sandifer or those areas. So I was just kind of questioning, we're talking about the viability of the downtown, which I'm all for, but it also seems like you really couldn't even put them depending on the boundaries of the parks. And I was just curious if there was, I know you were saying basically we'd have to work through that, but it just see if they had a map that actually, if you shrunk it down on the parks without the playground, what would it look like? That's what I was kind of curious on.
So are you requesting maybe a map to be able to show that what a reduction in a buffer?
I'm against marijuana, but I would kind of like to see, how it would all plan out. Again, I'm still probably going to be no, but I do think it would help constituents or business owners know where they fall in. If the school says you cannot do it and a particular business is hoping that he can, it would be good to know. I'm just saying, it would be nice to know what's available in the downtown.
Okay.
If I can add, we can provide a map that illustrates which lots or parcels would not be impacted by the buffer zones based on the uses and restrictions in the WACs and the proposed ordinance.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilman Serrano.
Yeah. And I guess this is my question to Councilman Campos and Maloney. Is the reduction of boundaries that's being discussed now a citywide for all parks in recreational facilities or specific to the downtown corridor. I think that may also help Mr. Ferguson out too. So.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
I'll only speak for myself, but my intent was just in the downtown corridor. My intention was not to try to do a citywide, so keep it focused on the downtown zone. And I would note that when you look at the map of here, given that Volunteer Park has playground equipment, Sylvester Park has playground equipment, the Blue schools, we can't reduce that. We can't reduce that even if we wanted to, which certainly I don't think we do. That really leaves basically like 2 parks. There's not a whole lot of parks across the city that don't meet the playground requirement, I think, by definition. So really, my intent was to focus just on that core area, not to do a blanket application across the city.
Okay, that's helpful and all.
Yeah, but basically the same thing. I would also agree. I'd like to leave whatever buffer we have outside. It's just my beef is with Peanuts Plaza. I do not think it meets the definition of a park. I'm combing through the WACs right now. I see definition of plaza for like Central Washington University, and it's very well fleshed out for something that's for like public speech and events, something that we're using Peanuts Park for very routinely. And so again, my question to staff really is I want some clarity on what the difference between a park and a plaza is, and do we really need to reduce that boundary? Would it just be better to redesignate Peanuts Park as something else? Then we wouldn't have to touch any buffers. So
Okay.
that's my big question.
No, I appreciate it. I wasn't sure if we were trying to flow that into the citywide or just specific on the zone. That's helpful to understand.
City Manager?
We'd have to look into it a little further, but I think there was, at one point, there was some funding tied to the fact that it was a park. So we'll look into that. So that option of calling it something else may or may not be a viable one, but we'll double check that.
Thank you. You answered my question, actually. My question was going to be to Mr. Ferguson. What would the process be to redesignate Peanuts Park / Plaza?
I would need to go look that up. That could be interesting, especially in light of federal funding and state funding and other things.
Okay, so we are here discussing this issue because we need to give direction to staff on how we're going to move forward. There's an issue about renaming, redesignating the park, and there's the question about reducing the buffer for this particular area. I see nods, right? And I've heard the comments. Are we able to, for next meeting, have information regarding redesignation of the park so that we can then decide whether we need to reduce the buffer area or just what would be the best way or the fastest, easiest way?
I think probably the fastest way would be to lower the buffers and to ensure that map meets what I think the majority of council is looking for. I think that gets us to the point where majority council is heading. That doesn't mean we can't still look into those other items, but I think that procedurally would add another step that doesn't get us to passing this ordinance. So I think that would be probably the easiest thing for council to do.
Okay. Councilman Campos?
Yeah, I just want to clarify. I'm not trying to solicit city staff to redesignate it. I definitely think that, for my own curiosity, I think that's what I'm looking for. But the easiest path forward is kind of why I'm asking that question. And obviously, there's probably some context there that would make it more difficult. But ultimately, the goal is to be able to put some business in the downtown Pasco area. So, like city manager said, whatever the easiest path forward is.
All right, so the directive would be to move forward with a reduction of the buffer to a suggested 100? Pete?
It's certainly up to council, but there's all sorts of variations out there between 650 versus 100 and 325. I mean, there's really open season in terms of what kind of reduction you would be looking for, and then if you're looking to reduce it in one specific zone and one specific portion of one specific zone, it sounds like you're talking C2 downtown only.
Downtown only.
Okay, and so I don't know what council would be looking for with regard to reduction. Minimum obviously is 100. You'd need to go through the process to do that, and it's currently at 1,000.
Any input, Councilwoman Roach?
Thank you, Mayor, for time to speak. What I've heard council members say, I've heard different things. I don't want to get too far down on the road, but I do agree with Councilmember Campos. It seems like we could do some workshopping in our definitions or refining of parks versus plaza. And I think for the long term, I am on board with that. But for this conversation about whether we reduce the buffer, I've heard two other council members say they're in favor of reducing the buffer down from 1,000 feet. I feel similarly. I think the original conversation a year ago was downtown business owners asking us to allow them to lift the moratorium and bring this business to downtown. And so to me, the reduction of the buffer is in that C2 downtown corridor. That's from my perspective. As I read the packet, I had a couple different thoughts. We could use the public notice requirement, which is, I think, radius of 300 feet, or we could do something different. But I haven't quite heard any consensus, Mayor, from council on what that exact amount of direct line of feet is from the business to a public plaza or park. So I'm kind of waiting to hear that from the council members and comments what they would feel comfortable with. I just threw out a number, 300, but it's just that I feel like I'm throwing out random numbers. So
Thank you for that.
And I do want to just potentially manage expectations. The idea that we would be able to redesignate any park that fits the statutory definition is highly unlikely. And so if the goal is to, I mean, we'll look into it and obviously we'll check and make sure there's nothing there, but I do not foresee that being an option moving forward. And so if the goal is to be able to have certain facilities in certain places, reduction of the buffer is the way to do that under the statute. That's my recommendation.
Thank you for that clarification recommendation. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney and then Councilman Campos.
Councilmember Roach, in answer to your question, 300 feet would still indicate almost the entire of downtown, the core of downtown. It's a large, if you look from property line to property line, that would still pretty much ban retail cannabis from downtown. I would recommend that we go to the minimum for Peanuts Park at 100, and as well as that, again, that park that's right across the railroad tracks on the corner of northwest corner of East Lewis and North Main, which also does not have any playground equipment. Both of those reduce both those to 100 feet of buffer.
It's Wayside Park.
Wayside Park, yeah. Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Councilman Campos.
Again, I think I've made my position clear on what I think of Peanuts Park, and I think I'm in favor of basically taking that buffer down to minimum.
Okay. Any further comment? Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Yes, I just wanted to raise the point again. I think I was the only one who talked about the ordinance potentially limiting the number of cannabis facilities within the city of Pasco, the number of licenses that we would authorize to 3 or 4 if there is a social equity license. And again, I think we should just, as a council, we should just be out of the way on this one. So I'm interested in hearing from my fellow council members. We need to provide staff some sort of direction, and I alone, I would be happy to do so, but I would much rather have the council members that are interested weigh in on this and help provide direction to staff.
Councilman Serrano.
I'm sure you know what I'm gonna say on this one. I'm fine with leaving this and limiting it. You know, I mean, putting 3 or 4 businesses, I think, is adequate for the city. You know, I think that's gonna be adequate for market. So I'm okay with leaving it with limitation as it sits. They're gonna be potentially available throughout the entirety of the city. You know, so I think 3 or 4 license issuances throughout the city is adequate.
Councilman Campos.
I won't disagree with Mayor Pro Tem Maloney, but I would agree with Councilman Serrano. I think the consensus that we've heard from the public is some trepidation, and we want to kind of put our toes in the water. You know, we as council can always revisit and, you know, open it up completely and without limitations. And I think that as a whole, the amount of people who've come out and spoke, not necessarily against this, but the yes buts, I would say that they are about 1/3 of the population of people that came out. And I think we really need to kind of weigh into how they feel, and having a limitation for right now is the smart move. So I'm just in favor of just leaving it alone. And again, those of you who've served with me on council understand how much I feel about the free market, but you know, I'm ready to just move on this as written. I'd like to just let it go.
Any further discussion? Councilman Milne.
Yeah, I'd agree with Councilman Campos as well on this. Just try to leave it and see how it all falls. I'm not for more marijuana, that's for sure, but if we could reduce it and see how this goes, it seems like the wiser course of action, if it has to be.
Thank you. Further discussion? Any other comments? Councilwoman Roach.
Thank you, Mayor, for recognizing me. I really feel strongly that we don't need to add additional language of limitation, because this is something issued from the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Control Board, not by us at the city of Pasco. They have their limitations. And we know that for Franklin County, that's going from 3 to 4 licenses, licenses, and that's it. So that's where I sit.
Okay. With no further discussion, there.
So at this point, I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. So at this point, go ahead. At this point, it sounds like we're going to be returning with an ordinance with the language currently drafted with regard to the C and I zones. We will return with a reduction of parks for downtown, C2 downtown only, with a limitation of stores as currently drafted, as well as continuing to not allow cooperatives, production and processing.
That is correct. Do you have a further comment?
Yes, I'll agree with my fellow council member Campos. They were there saying that it sounds like we're deadlocked on whether or not to limit the facilities. We've heard, I think, equal parts weighing in. So I'm not sure that's the direction we as council have come to a consensus on, is including or not including that language. This is not a big hold point for me, but it's something the more we can limit our influence here, it's hard for me to predict the free market and want to regulate it in that form of fashion. But I would like to hear from council members who haven't weighed in on this to make sure we have a consensus on whether to leave the language or whether to keep the language in as staff has originally drafted it, or strike that language. So I guess I'm not sure we have a majority. So Mayor, I think I don't believe you've raised a preference, and Councilmember Brown, I'm not sure if you raised a preference.
Right.
So I'm.
Well, I'll state that we should not put any further limitations. There's already regulations on this, and so I will follow those regulations versus adding anything else.
So it's true dumb luck.
It's all still uncomfortably under me.
All right. No, I think we just need to move forward and do what we said earlier. We'll take a look at it again, but let's just move on this.
Mayor Pro Tem Lo.
That's where I'm at.
So is that on 20, in our draft ordinance, there's a section that says the number of zoning districts identifying retail uses, it will be limited, shall not exceed 3 in total or 4 with the license. You want to leave that language in? Okay, thank you.
Okay, we can return with that, and any other amendments can obviously take place. We can follow up with the additional questions, answers to the additional questions, and certainly there's nothing to prohibit discussion and amendment of whatever we bring back. So I'm not going to promise next week, but we will. We should have it within the next couple weeks, 2-3 weeks.
Okay, sounds good. So with no further discussion on this item, we'll move forward to item B on the agenda, 2022 Fire Department Performance Report by
Well, I'll start off. Council,
Chief Gear.
Madam Mayor and Council, we're happy to present our 2022 performance report as required by RCW to the council. Deputy Chief Dunbar, who does most of our statistical analysis and reporting, will do the report. And with that, it's nowhere near as exciting, I'm sure, as cannabis, but we'll move ahead with it.
Well, good evening,
Thank you.
Mayor and Council, staff, and those watching online. You're right, Chief Gear's right, this isn't gonna be as exciting, but it's a key element of what we do here for the city. So with that, every year we have to do by RCW, a report on our performance. We decide to wrap a much larger element into that. So with that, we'll go through here. Hopefully I can get through this pretty quick. So our strategic plan that you guys approved last year has many different things outlined in it, and we are still working towards that. One of those was to update the 2016 master plan, which we completed last year, and you guys approved that one after discussion earlier. So we've got that taken care of. As you can see, there's the new logos that the crews worked on and designed while they had nothing better to do in COVID than sit around the station and clean. We do have a Station 85 logo that has been designed, but we're not going to reveal that until Station 85 comes online. Really, in the strategic plan, we haven't done much on that. We will probably update the strategic plan in the coming year in 2024, because it's been 5 years since we've done that. Many of the things align with your council goals, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. The master plan, as I said, we updated it in 2022. It outlined all the steps we needed to deal with the growth. It had a series of many different short, mid, and long-term recommendations, many of which we've already got in place. One of them is to build Station 85. We're moving forward with that. You guys approved that master plan back in July of 2022, and we are working on implementing that as we are going along. Those two things fed into, or were fed by your council goals. Those really haven't changed much. I know you guys raised up to a much higher level instead of the detail you had in previous years. So they're a little bit more high level, trying to figure those out, but that really hasn't changed much. We still consider these the guidance from you guys on how we operate on a day-to-day business. And it also does drive our mission statement to honorably protect and serve our community. So with that, we've got our master plan, a strategic plan. We're currently working on a standard of cover / EMS study. That, in conjunction with the community risk assessment that is going to be part of that standard of cover, will also be completed next year. Those are basically the 4 pillars that we're going to drive our performance metrics off of. So we've got all these different plans that are telling us what we need to do. Those then set up those pillars of excellence that we do, those 5 elements that hold up what we're trying to do and how we actually measure our performance against that. One of the big ones is the WSRB rating. We are a 3 now. We are actually going to be re-rated in September of 23. And actually, underneath interim, Mr. Gonzalez, Jacob, the building department's actually been re-rated. They started earlier and gave information to WSRB. So they're already collecting data at the state level to do that. So we'll bring that back to you when that comes back. And again, those council goals are a piece of that as well. One of the big things we do is we've got a high level of technical competence. As you can see, Firefighter 1, Firefighter 2, those are certifications. Each certification allows us to reduce the number of training hours required by WSRB. I was hoping to be able to tell you that in 2022, we got to 100% on Firefighter 1. Well, the last individual took the test, he's got it, but he's got some other testing to do, so we'll see if that happens for the rest of this year. Firefighter 2, we're really close. We've got about 3 individuals. A couple of those are close to retirement, so they don't have a whole lot of incentive to get that last little bit. So we'll see where that ends up. We may get to 100% by attrition here in the next couple of years, though. With our academy that comes in, and we have that joint academy with Richland right now, all the recruits come out with Firefighter 1 and Firefighter 2, as well as hazmat awareness and ops. So that from here forward, that's not going to be an issue. In fact, I'm probably going to stop reporting on it because that is the new standard for any of the recruits coming out. Moving over to the fire officer, that's all tied back into some of our succession planning. In fact, we just got through with our promotional testing, May 15th. It'll go to civil service to get approved. With the new station coming online in December, January timeframe, we'll have a promotion. One of our battalion chiefs is also retiring this June, so we'll have a couple of promotions there. So with that, we're going to have several new people in there. Part of their elements in order to test for that level is they have to have Fire Officer 1 or Fire Officer 2 certifications. So all of the officers currently are Fire Officer 1. In addition to that, we've got others that are Fire Officer 1 and or Fire Officer 2. In fact, one of our recruits from 2 years ago actually came to the department with everything through Fire Officer 2 because he came in from another agency that was very progressive on doing that kind of stuff. But he wanted to come someplace that had a little bit more call volume. So we get that benefit as well. So that still continues to go. You may ask why we went down from our Fire Officer 2 from 22 to 22. It kind of stayed level. Well, we had a couple of people retire that did that, as well as we added 15 new employees based on the SAFER grant. So that kind of diluted that statistical number. That's why the drops happened. So that's what's driving that. With that comes the training hours. We do a lot of training, not only by specialty, which is all the cool fun stuff like going out on the boat, getting into trenches, confined space, hanging off of tall radio towers out off at 68 in Court. But it's wearing your SCBA, it's dragging the hose, it's doing the CPR, all those kind of things. And we managed to stay right about where we were in 2021 and 2022. We're much better. We went up from 2020, so we're back up over 300 hours. With that really does play into that whole WSRB, but it also talks to that technical competence that we mentioned earlier. The amount of training done by each one of the individuals on our department really does take a lot of time, in addition to our increased call volume. So it's getting even tougher and tougher to maintain those high training hours with the increased call volume that I'll talk about here in a little bit. One other thing on the training hours, one of the things we're working on, and I think Chief Gear had that in City Manager's report last Friday, is we're starting that officer development program starting this month. So once a month, all the officers will get together and have a formal officer development it'll play into that whole section planning as well. Moving on to the next part, the operational readiness. One of the big measurements is unit hour utilization. That's basically how busy, how many hours a day is each apparatus. Right now, we continue to see that increase. It increased quite a bit between 2019 and 20, and up into 21 and 22, we've seen big increases over those years. Between 21 and 22, there really wasn't that much of an increase for our busiest one, which is Medic 2823, which is out at Sandifer and 68. They're still at 14%. We do have, which means 14% of their 24-hour shift, they're on calls. That doesn't take care of training or anything else like that. Once you get to a 25% utilization, that starts to impact not only crew readiness, you can't do your training, all that kind of stuff. So if you think about it, when you're spending a quarter of your day doing nothing but calls, and then you have to come back and write reports and then do everything else, that takes a big chunk of it. So we do have some goals. When we hit that 25%, we look at other options. We're nowhere near that yet, but we'll see how the next couple of years goes. So this is one of the key elements, and when we do that standards of cover study, it'll be interesting to see what they come back and see how they want to adjust this or make some recommendations, especially since we're doing that jointly with the cities of Richland and Kennewick, and look across the area to see if we can adjust this to maintain where we're at moving forward. Incidents, what do we go to? Well, we go to big, large black columns of smoke every now and then. No, those are not the same fire. One is from a brush fire that got into a pile of railroad ties and all that kind of stuff off of Lewis in East Pasco, and the other one was at Road 56 and Sylvester, and that building no longer exists. That was the second fire we had there because it burnt once before. So a majority of our calls are EMS. That's what drives our trucks out the door. Really what we're doing is about 80.5% of our calls are EMS related. Now, if you see the rescue and emergency medical service incident only says 70% on that chart, but we also do go to what we call lift assists. So those are categorized underneath the service call, but really they're to assist somebody getting either back up in bed, fell off the toilet, needs assistance getting in and out of a car, something like that. That to us is still an EMS call, so we roll that over to EMS. The other one is we had what I call canceled en route to an EMS call. So we get dispatched to an EMS call, but caller calls back and says, nope, never mind. Or we get dispatched over to Kennewick or another area that, nope, they don't need us anymore. Well, those are EMS related, so I lumped that in there as well. The last piece is related to our Pasco Resource Navigator system, the PRN, and that generates about 135 calls a year. It's not a lot, but it does, so that just adds. So all that adds up to about 4/5 of our work is EMS related, and that's not going to change as we go forward. We continue to see an increase in that. One of the increases that has driven that EMS up so high, especially with PD, and I'll pick on Captain Vaught a little bit because he's here. Some of the calls that they don't go to anymore are saw somebody that looked like they were passed out in a car. Well, Pasco PD used to take care of those. If they found a problem, then they would call us. Well, since there's no crime involved, they really can't go deal with those. They'll still drive by, but they really can't involve it unless there's other things going on. So we get dispatched to it. We come up and check. And last year we had about 600 of those calls. Doesn't seem like a lot, but that's it's 5 calls every 3 days. So you go to the Circle K, you see somebody that maybe just taking a nap because they've been working all night. We take a unit or 2 out of service to go check on this person. There's not a problem. Now, if we have another call in that station's area, we've got to bring a farther station in so it impacts some other stuff that we'll talk about. So we're seeing a real increase in that, but we've all categorized that underneath an EMS call because there may be a true EMS call at that incident. And there have been a couple where we've gone where they were overdosing in their car. We've given Narcan or done treatment and gone from there. So but some of those get coded a little bit differently, so they actually fall underneath that. So there's probably some additional calls in there that are true EMS, but those are the ones the way we're coding some of that kind of stuff.
Deputy Chief?
Yes, sir.
With that large of a ratio, do we have the right split of personnel? Should we have more EMS personnel as opposed to people who are classified as firefighters? If the answer is not right in front of us, that's fine. Obviously where we can get more personnel per dollar, if that's an option to resolve issues that are more prevalent, it'd be interesting to know that.
Yeah, we've looked at, that's one of the things that we're doing as part of that EMS study that we're doing jointly with Richland to see, are we applying the right resources to the different medical calls? Do we need to make some changes? How are we doing? Do we need to buffer some staff? Do we need to put a peak demand unit during some of our busier times? Those kind of things. Those are recommendations that study is going to come back and tell us, hey, here's some things to think about. They're not going to tell us, go do this. It's, here's our recommendations. And we're looking at that region-wide because Kennewick's twice as busy, not twice as busy, but almost twice as busy as us. Kennewick's, or Richland's a little bit busier than us. Then they have assisted care facilities, which drive a lot of their call volume. So they're probably 85-90% fire or EMS. Although Kennewick's been burning up the world here lately, as you've seen a couple of times. Yeah, we get the smoke, they get the fun. So that'll be part of that study when it comes back. So hopefully we'll bring that back to you guys in August with some of those recommendations, and that'll be part of the thing that which we look at. So I'm anxious to see what that whole thing is. Do we have the right scope of people? I think with our service model, how we deliver the service, I think it's appropriate for right now. And I go back to that unit utilization. We're not anywhere near that 25%. If we were up at 18, 19 and pushing it, yeah, I think we would have to start looking at things a little more in depth. But I think right now we're okay. With some of the changes we've got with some of the navigator systems, some of those other things we've got the behavioral health person that's really done a lot of work that I'll talk a little bit about. That's also taken some of that load off of our EMS personnel, because you get that one call, they go deal with that, frees them up to go deal with the other, in the true 911 emergencies. So I think those combination of efforts have really moved us forward. Yep. Just checking my notes to make sure. Talked about the PRN. That's kind of some of the stuff. I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. So where do we have our calls? So this is one of the beloved heat maps that come in that the cops hate, but I guess they're using them now. So it's that friendly rivalry that we have going on. As you can see, the bigger the circle, the more calls. Station 83, when we relocated it north of 182 into the call volume, that made a big difference. About 2.5 to 1 calls above 182 versus below 182. So we're actually doing much better in our performance because we moved the station to where the call volume was happening. So that's one of the reasons we moved it up there to Sandifer and 68, and it's made a bit of difference. And here in a bit, we'll show the response. Another view of that, this is something we get from our CAD data. Each one of those little black dots is an incident within. As you can see, there's different colors. Each one of those is a zone around each one of the stations, so we can track kind of where we need to break those out if we need to do something different, draw lines a little differently, and track how busy they are. So just a different view of what we had below, or the previous slide. One of the things that we have is we have what's called fire management zones, and those are the quarter sections. Those stay consistent throughout time. The ESZs that you saw on this map that have the different colors, those change over time. As you can see on the west end, we've got some that say 853, 851. That's going to be where new station 85 is going to be. Those were new before, they were all in 83. So here we're looking at it on the quarter section. The one on the left is the one from 2021. The one on the right is 2022. Anything that's green is really good because it's over 90% of the time we got there within our 6-minute response time. Yellow is 70% of the time we got there within that 6-minute. Red, we're not performing to 70%. As you can see on the southwest portion of the town, we're putting Station 85. Hopefully when I come back at the end of 2023, do the 2023 report, well, we won't have it, 2024. For some of you might be there, some of you might not. You'll be able to see that go yellow and or green. But you can see that the green actually grew up where we went into that Station 83 area. So just by relocating that, we had a positive impact. And you may think, well, how did we impact our constituents to the south of 182? Well, that goes back to there's 1 call for every 2.5 calls south than it is north. So we're really not impacting that many. When you call 911, it means everything to you. But when we're looking at the whole system wide, we're actually doing much better. So one of the other things we did is we broke it up into non-emergency response and emergency response. Non-emergency response is, hey, I've fallen, that lift assist. We don't run lights and sirens to those. We'll get to you. We're going to get there with normal traffic. The heart attacks, strokes, those kind of fires, we're going to run with lights and sirens. So that's what these two are broken off of. The one on the right is emergency response, and you can see we do a little bit better on that one than we do with the non-emergency response because there's additional traffic. You're driving a little slower. We don't get the preemption in the traffic signals, those kind of things. So this is some of the analysis we do on where we want to put stations, how things are performing, that kind of thing. So overall, we're doing pretty good. When you look at the northeast, that industrial zone to the northeast, when we build Station 87, when we get there, that's gonna have an impact on that. The thing about that, we're less than 200 calls out in that area. So, but it is gonna have a big impact on Dairy Gold with them being up there. So if we can do something with them, and I know the chief has been working with city staff on that as well. Overlapping incidents, we kind of touched on it. This was when we have one call going on, we now have a second call. Now the first due station has to be covered by a second due station. Now they leave a hole, now another station has to come in and do there. Well, we've got 70%, over 75% of our calls are happening at the same time. So it's very busy. That's one of the reasons it drives that performance. That's why we use a 90th percentile as well. So this is one of those things we're keeping in a very close eye on how much is overlap. The chart on the left shows how many incidents per 1,000 residents, so it's a per capita by incident versus the overlapping incidents. And you can see that our overlapping incidents have grown over and what our incidents per capita have gone. So what that means is we're getting more calls and more calls and more calls with a similar type population. So the same number of people are generating even more calls. And as we grow, that's even going to become worse. So by throwing or adding additional resources to the mix, that should be able to help it. Yes, sir.
Deputy Chief Dunbar, what are your target numbers then, if that's the case? Do you have a target that you'd like to hit on this?
For overlapping calls, what it would be, the goal is always 0, but that's not realistic.
Right.
So I don't think we have a target for doing that. I think what it is we look and see what's driving that overlap. Is it the appropriate use of 911? Do we have a large impact of a processing facility that's driving many calls? Do we have a high intersection where we have a high crash rate? Team up with the partners of our PD to see what's going on. Then we can look at it. Do we have things coming into downtown where we have overdose problems, those kind of the homeless that drive some of that population? We look at that. We can't prevent it or we can't stop it. And I would say that no, we don't have a specific goal of what's good or bad. If it's really going high, we need to figure out how we can do to address it more than anything.
I'll add that one of the things you want to look at with overlapping calls is, are they occurring community-wide or are they occurring in a response area of a single station? And if a high percentage of those are occurring in a single station's response area, then you think about doing things like maybe adding a second ambulance to that station so that they can take that next overlapping call and it doesn't have to be covered from a station that's a lot farther away. So that's the kind of data that we try and look at. We just really saw this big jump in the last year, last 2 years, but the last year of overlapping exceeding the per capita calls, and it's something that's going to take more examination and see what the pattern plays out.
Before you ask your question, what I will tell you is Station 83, 20% of their calls are overlapping. So that's getting to the point where we may need to look at, which is if once we put 85 in play, that'll drop. Because right now, based on my ESZs, the emergency service zones, 85's overlapping calls is at 5%. So that means that they'll be available to take that other call. They're much closer as well. So yeah, we're running anywhere between 10 to 20% overlapping calls right now at the station level.
Great. Yeah, I just want to share that was my experience when I did my ride along with you guys. That was, predominantly what I got to do was, we filled in a lot. It wasn't necessarily that we were responding to the calls that came in to us. It was that we were covering for someone else. And so at one point we got to hang out and cover for the airport, which was really cool. Then I got to see, your guys' equipment there and saw some neat stuff. So it just, this one steps out to me, and because I can relate. I got to see it firsthand what you guys are dealing with. So that's why the interest. Thank you guys.
And like I said, we're at almost 20% at Station 83, which is why we would look at that specific area. So the other thing to look at is those overlapping calls. Even though our call volume went up from 21 to 22, our percentage of overlapping calls stayed about the same. So we'll see what this year brings as we go forward. Total response time, your guys' goal for us is to get there 6 minutes, 90% of the time. Well, you can see that we've kind of slipped a little bit. Part of that's due to we've implemented a different response model. We're not going emergency to all the commercial fire alarms, so it may take us a little bit longer to get there. And this wraps in every single call. So there's some other things within the resolution that you guys have set, which was done way back in 1998, I believe, that when we do the standard of cover and those recommendations, we're going to come back with revisions to that resolution to say, hey, we're going to need to do a little bit different. On these type of calls, we're going to respond non-emergent. It's going to take us a little longer, but the risk isn't there. So we're going to break up a little bit more detail on this rather than looking at just one big lump sum. Looking at averages in the fire service doesn't work. That's why we look at 90th percentile. You throw out those one-offs in that 90th percentile, averages and medians don't really work too well. So, but we'll look at this specifically as we move forward. So that's one of the things that'll come out of that standards of cover study as well. EMS, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Captain Chris Mortensen sent city manager an email, and then he forwarded on to you guys saying that our Utstein measurement doubled from 22 to or 21 to 22. Unfortunately, I didn't have that information when I got this report done. As soon as I got it into review, Chris came and said, "Here, I have the numbers finally." So, but one of the things I did include here is our STEMI performance. STEMI is basically a heart attack. It's called ST, elevated myocardial infarction. ST deals with different parts of the heart. It's basically you're having an active heart attack right now. You need to be at a hospital that can provide a catheter to open up those blood flows so that you can stop the heart muscle damage. So we've done really well. That red line on there shows the goal. If you look, the very longest one, that is actually a patient from North Franklin County. So that's not really our patient, but we did end up transporting him to the hospital. What was good about that one is think about driving from Connell all the way to Cadlick. That's a long drive. And if you're having a heart attack, that's not good. But when they recognize it early, they call for our help early, we can have positive impact, and then we can get them there and do the right things for them. So we're doing quite a bit. One of the other things that firefighter Shear works on, and I know Captain Mortensen is going to work on, is the hands-only CPR, heart-safe community. You can see that cardiac arrests by locations, most of them are still happening in homes. We've got the pulse point application that if somebody was to have sudden cardiac arrest right now in the council chambers, there's probably about 50% of us that would get an alert on our phone that, hey, somebody needs CPR in the city council chambers, and we would be able to respond. Unfortunately, that doesn't work when you're in your home because it's a private location. We don't blast that out. So by getting out and doing the hands-only CPR, doing the training, doing the events, that's why Ben was down there all Cinco de Mayo doing that with some of the people. Get the family involved, that's going to help. But that all plays into that Utstein performance because in order to go from the 40% in 2021 to the 2022% of 75%, that includes adding bystander CPR and or defibrillation to that thing, which means that 75% of the people survived instead of 40% year over year. So that's a significant impact to what we're able to provide to the community. Following up, there's a ton of other information. We've seen our homeless patient contacts go up. 2021, we had 178 male, and now we're at 214. The females actually went down from 91 to 76. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Now we're seeing the unknown gender in there. We'll see where that goes with how we report. You may never see another male or female report in my reports from here on out because of the whole gender identity thing and all that. So we'll have to see how that goes, even though it does play into how we treat people a little bit differently medically. So alcohol, drug use indicators by situation, you guys just spent the last little bit talking about everything. We go on those all the time. I've already seen a little bit of an uptick in the overdoses this year over last year. From 21 to 22, we stayed about the same. We're about 250 overdoses last year, so that's kind of where we're at. And then just trying to figure out how many people we transported or didn't transport. Sometimes we get on scene and people don't really need to be transported. We explain what's going on. They can go to an urgent care. We put that unit back in service for the next serious call. Our Pasco Resource Navigator system, this is kind of high over look at what it is. We had some struggles this last year with our navigators. We lost one due to a couple of different things. We weren't fully staffed throughout the full year. So we weren't able to make as many contacts in 22 as we did in 21. but they're still having a very positive impact on everything. Before, my predecessor, Chief Hare, identified a very small percentage of the patients were driving a large percentage of the call. No, Chief, do you remember what that was off the top of your head?
About 1% of the population accounted for 10% of the calls in the city.
So now, I just looked at it again, and we're up to about 6% is driving 30%. So we've done some work just in navigators to take those people out. Looking at that, we had 14 patients last year that had more than 8 encounters with us. That means we went to somebody more than 8 times. In fact, I know one patient, we were at his house 25 separate times. So that drives call, it takes the stuff out. Most of those times he wasn't transported, but you know what? Since we had a conversation with that individual and we got our behavioral people and our mental health people in there, we haven't really seen him much over the last 3 months. So he has stabilized. So that work that we've been able to do took that way down. So we'll be able to continue to see that. We still get referrals by all ages, all the way from 0 up to, I think the highest one was 99. So there's all sorts of folks out there that need all sorts of help. It's not just the homeless that are 35 to 55. It's the whole range. And then we were able to complete most of them. Some of them move away. Obviously some die, so they get completed that way. That's not the way it is. But it's a fact of life. So that's only 12%. The rest we actually are doing pretty well on. Some of them move away. They can move to Kennewick or Richland or somewhere else, so we don't have to worry about them anymore. But we do work with our partners. Richland's got a navigator. Kennewick's bringing a navigator on. West Richland has a program. So when we know that a patient has moved to one of those locations, we'll actually team up with them and work with those navigators to say, hey, this is what we were doing. This is what was successful, and then continue to go from there. This is kind of a busy slide. This is one of the ones that Ben and I are going to continue to look at, especially for the community risk reduction, because this drives where are we having a fire, what's causing that fire, why are we having false alarms and all that kind of stuff. And we're looking in single family residence versus our multifamily residence. We're building a lot more apartments. The apartments are full. We've had a varying amount of false alarms. The false alarms have dropped in our single family residence because of the active smoke alarm program that Ben heads up. We've got stations going out. We've also got some things where we're at that 10-year life cycle on many of our smoke alarms, so we're getting out instead of doing just battery changes, whole smoke alarm changes that we'll see here in just a minute. So the false alarms are going down, and our fires have stayed pretty consistent. One of the things we did 5 years ago was look at cooking fires. Our cooking fires have really dropped. Now we're getting other things so that are being driven by a variety of different things. Just the other day we had an electric bike that actually started on fire. Fortunately, it was mostly out by extinguisher when our engine got there, which I was surprised at. But we'll see how that continues to move forward. So this is very busy. We can use this to kind of look at where we want to drive our community risk assessment, what programs we want to do. So Ben and I spend some time looking at these to see where we need to drive those community risk reduction programs and go from there. Overall, we're staying pretty consistent. We've got to a point where we're not seeing a big jump in fires or anything like that. I bet if I looked at Kennewick's, this would be ugly. So let's keep those over in Kennewick, even though that's where we like to go. So community risk reduction. We've had, as I mentioned, our smoke alarm installs have gone way up, mainly because we did a push about 10 years ago. The lifespan of a smoke alarm is 10 years, so we're now seeing where we're going out and replacing those instead of just the batteries. Plus, we're putting 10-year batteries in them, so they're lasting longer, they're doing much better. We still haven't come out of that COVID event piece, so there's two things there. We need to get back involved in events with the community, and then we've also got to do a much better job of documenting what events we actually did. Ben's a really busy guy, so he does a lot, but he doesn't always write it down. So he and I are always having that discussion. We can't take credit for what we don't write down. So with that, that's where we're at. That's the end of the report. So any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Chief Dunbar. Great presentation. I will have some sentiment. I think that interim Community Economic Development Director Jacob Gonzalez's title is a lot to say, and I don't even think I got it right that time. Again, great job, you guys. I think, again, as Mayor echoed with our Pasco PD, it's just, you guys are just phenomenal, and we're really lucky to have you in the city.
Well, we appreciate that. We couldn't do it without the cops. It's that friendly rivalry. We're a big team out there.
I do want to mention that when we had our delegation from Pasco, Peru, appreciate the tour that was provided to the delegation. However, I also heard some of the updates, and I spoke to some of your staff that were very proudly sharing of the equipment and the need for more, right? But I do want to say that your program with the Resource Navigator has greatly impacted the community to where it's changed those calls. I've seen it on my end through my work.
Yep.
Ben, thank you again for all that work that you do. Also do want to say that your campaign to go out door to door, hanging those door hangers, reminders for the smoke alarm. Thank you. For the smoke alarm change has worked great. I've got some calls from neighbors because apparently they missed the date. And so I told them, neighbors, if you're watching, I told them, I told the department, I told them that I would tell the department that there needs to be another event to do, again, some more outreach. It is working. What you're doing is working in the community. It's making an impact, positive impact. And so thank you again for your hospitality to people from outside. Thank you again for the great work that you're doing in the community to reduce all these risks and reducing the number of calls. So appreciate that. Chief, thank you again for your leadership. Any other comments from council members? Councilwoman Roach, do you have any comments?
Just want to say appreciate the really thorough report from Deputy Chief Dunbar. I love seeing data, so I was very much engaged and intrigued by what you were sharing with us. Thank you.
No problem. If you ever have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I know Councilman Maloney's asked me a few questions in the past. Anytime you guys look at that thing and find questions that we need to answer for you, we're here to present the data to you to help you make better decisions so we can do what we need to do. So if you don't understand it, we need to know.
Final question. My understanding that this is going to be Chief's last sit-through for this presentation. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Again, I think we embarrassed Rick. I just want to say congratulations, Chief, on your lengthy career and enjoyment for your future retirement.
Thank you, Chief Gear. Thank you, Deputy Chief Dunbar. And I know we're going to have more questions. And my question right now, though, is how do we schedule a ride-along?
You call Rhonda at Station 84 and get on the schedule.
There we go.
So, yeah, she'll get you set up and
council
go from there.
Okay,
So-
thank you so much.
No, thank you. Appreciate it.
And I also, just before you walk off, just want to say thank you to your staff the day that the delegation was here. They were very, very impressed.
And they had fun, especially
They
with
sure did.
asking questions of why are you guys all in red? Because there's no way we would do that. So, yeah, we like our blues. So,
Yes, thank
yeah,
you.
it was a good time had by all. So we appreciate you coming along and doing that.
Thank you. All right, so, any further questions or comments before we move along? So hearing none or seeing none, no other comments, we're gonna move on right along to next item on the agenda, item 6, miscellaneous council discussion. Councilman Serrano.
After the Belia ribbon cutting, I had the opportunity to speak with Representatives Rude, Schmick, and Senator Banky, specifically addressing the potential Blake fix that we may or may not see out of Olympia. And the three of them, and I'll say this, I don't want to couch their words wrong, but Senator Banky and Schmick were very emphatically not just in support of the city having a position and passing an ordinance, but they emphatically stated that we not only needed to do that ahead of session, but then to basically send that out to them, send that out to other folks in Olympia, Representative Rude echoed the same sentiments, maybe not as vehemently or however you want to say that. But certainly those two gentlemen were very clear. Make the fix you want, pass the fix you want, and then send it to Olympia and let us either utilize that as leverage or do what we can to negotiate from a position that represents the citizens of Pasco. One of the comments from, I think it was Banky, was, listen, you know, if you were a smaller jurisdiction, it might not have the same impact, but encroaching 100,000 people, your voice is going to carry a lot of weight in Olympia. Obviously not as much as even larger jurisdictions, but bottom line is, I know we've talked about this. I know I've requested, at least from my perspective, something from staff, and I don't know when the time is right. I'd like to see it now, but you know, obviously that takes a majority of council to request that. So in my opinion, we need a Blake fix. We needed something that we can share with our legislators and share with that delegate and say, hey, this is what we want you to aim for to protect the citizens of Pasco, so that we're not seeing people, you know, in peanuts and overdosing or utilizing drugs when we're out with our families. So whenever you're ready, I know I'm ready, but again, I think I'm awaiting the rest of council, or at least the majority of council, to say, hey, we want to hear what we've got teed up. So I'm ready at any time.
Thank you
So
for comment.
just before any other folks go, I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of a status of where we are at and what has been going on. So one of the things that we have been working on for some time was a public use ordinance. So we put that together, and we're looking into how we would implement that. That also, back to Councilmember Brown's point earlier, because there were multiple references to cannabis and separate codes and certain things, and there were certain overlap, those two, the drafting of a lot of that stuff was going on at the same time simultaneously. And so, but when the possession issue cropped up, so we were drafting something to make it illegal to use drugs in public, but then also when the issue came up about being able to even possess, we had to switch gears and move that ordinance, that draft that we'd already had. It went from 9 pages to 22 pages. Now we're back down to 17. But long and short of it is, and I apologize, Council or Mayor Pro Tem Maloney, the changes to the nuisance section are actually in this ordinance, are in this draft. The references to cannabis and change to marijuana, and then the personal use. Those were in this ordinance, not in the other ordinance. So that's why they got separated, and I didn't pick that up. But anyway, long and short of it is, we did, we've kind of been going along and tracking along with this. And then now it looks like a special session has been called, so they'll be meeting in Olympia to try to discuss that. We met internally today, both with the chief of police and deputy chief and Captain Paramore and myself and the prosecutors, and as well as our council attorney Dan Hyde, who has drafted the ordinance. So the takeaway was they are going to be going to a meeting later this week with the other cities, the 4 cities, as well as the counties, to kind of discuss what that regional approach would look like. This is one of those situations where it would be very helpful that if this does in fact get passed and implemented and is necessary because the state doesn't move forward with something and then preempts it, it would be incredibly unfortunate to not have the same restrictions through the cities, because whoever doesn't have whoever's the least restrictive is going to find themselves in a very unfavorable position pretty quick. So with that being said, we got our strategy together. We have the most recent version of the ordinance. It is going to be used as the model for the group that gets together, looks like later on this week. So that's kind of exciting that we're kind of leading the charge on that. But then we should have some more information for you about what those next steps need to be. But it's really close to being ready to go. So we can act as soon as the council decides they want us to.
Thank you. Councilman Campos, you have some comments?
Yeah, just I think it's important. I think we discuss it sooner rather than later. Sounds as if staff is ready to bring it to us So I won't hash on that one anymore. One thing I wanted to talk about, just for my own memory's sake, and maybe for those who are engaged, Director Buckley, you and I exchanged a few emails a few months back about ARPA funds, and I think I got an email here that said we expect that we have about 400,000 of ARPA funds that are still unallocated. That process is still open for small businesses that potentially need, no?
No.
Okay. So I just wanted, again, point of clarification, I'm not tracking ARPA funding very closely, so just wanted to make sure that for my own sake, I get that refresher.
Yeah.
So can you give me a little synopsis there?
Sure, I've got to. What has happened is over the past few years, we've looked at different programs to use ARPA funds that fit into the 4 categories that it can be used, and have assigned some of those funds already or allotted them. One of those was for the business assistance program that was, we had a partner help us administrate it, which was the chamber. There was a time that the applications were accepted and then closed, and grants were given based on if people met eligibility, of course, and applied, met eligibility, which the main factor for eligibility was loss of revenue caused by COVID, which goes with the ARPA funding requirement. And so that closed, I believe, in September of 2020. My years are all mixed up now. Yeah, 2022. Okay, good, thank you. And so we are looking at what funding hasn't been allocated, but it would not be part of that program. And if we stood up another program, we definitely need to consider that we have to have everything as equitable as possible with the program that we had, and that we give everybody the same opportunity and we follow the rules in the same fashion that we did before. So I'm not sure that there's funds available ARPA-wise for the whole city. We're looking at that, but that program is closed.
Okay, all right. I think I have, for my own personal information, I think I have everything I need. So I just, again, thanks for taking the time to answer that and refresh my memory. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Thank you. I'll start with piggybacking on Councilmember Serrano in terms of the Blake fix and what we may need to do locally. I 100% agree. I want to get that in front of us as quickly as possible. Because this ends up being something that the legislature for each of the cities are going to have to pass, each of our city councils is going to need to pass this, the sooner it can get in front of the council members so that we can make sure that we understand what's in there and be able to assess that against our constituents' needs, just to make sure that we're not misaligned at the last minute. I would hate to be in a position where anyone on this council, or more likely another council in another city, is looking at various provisions and wanting to change things to tailor to their city's needs because it hasn't gone through that public vetting process with council. So I very much appreciate staff taking the lead on making sure that the work is being done. But I would also just say that this is a really visible and very important issue from a legislative perspective as well. We need to make sure to go through those hurdles properly, and make sure we have ample time to go through those processes. So I just want to mention that. The other thing I did want to just mention briefly is I'll mention that we have a VIP in the room here. We have Vinny from Vinny's Bakery, one of our favorite people, and certainly one of my favorite people, and someone I know a lot of us have a lot of love and support for. And so I won't talk about some of the challenges he's going through right now. I don't think it's fair, nor do I think I'm the right person to have that conversation. But I think we should all be watching out for him as best we can, and certainly there should be more to come on that. So he's been a big part of my family's life in terms of the amount of time we've spent at his place eating, how much we bring home from there, and it'd be a huge loss for our community to lose Vinny as a big part of that. So, anyways, I'll just say those statements right now. Thank you.
Councilwoman Roach, any comments?
I had seen a email out about meeting times for council meetings. And I know there was just kind of like a pull of availability that had happened via email. And so I don't know if tonight really is the night. I'm not certain, but I would direct that question to City Manager Lincoln. But I'm open to having that conversation and knowing if there's a more amenable time or date for us to meet. Thanks.
Thank you. City Manager.
We can certainly put that on as a discussion item if that's something that council would like. Sent out the results from our small poll sample size of 7. So there was not consensus in that poll, but I think we're at probably 5 that were in favor of moving the time to 6 p.m. on Monday in particular. But we can bring that back with the results and have a more formal discussion if that's what council would like to do.
Sounds good. All right, any further discussion from anyone else? City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So a couple things I wanted to bring up tonight. First of all, I wanted to echo what you all had mentioned, that Cinco de Mayo was, I think, a really great success. There was a lot of planning that went into it from the city side, along with the partnership with the DPDA, that I think made it much more smooth than it had been in previous years. They were meeting together as a group very regularly, and I think that really helped with the result that we saw, where it didn't look like there was really anything but just pure perfection. It was really great to see. Also want to acknowledge the fact that I think every single department was represented in some fashion of either helping with setup or helping staff the various booths that were down there. And I think almost all of our department directors were also present. So one of the things that we've been talking about is that show of presence and showing up for our community events. So I was really pleased to see the amount of city personnel supporting the event this year. And then the cat was out of the bag. Thank you, Councilmember Campos, for the next item. This is Chief Gear's last meeting with us. And he'll be on with us through the end of the month, but then he'll also help us out with the completion of Station 85. But I did want to mention a few things about Chief Gear, since he's really looking forward to people saying nice things about him for the next couple of months. So, one, I think it's very rare that you would see a chief in his time get to grow stations like it's potatoes, but 83, 84, and almost 85 have all been under his tenure as chief, and I think that's something that's very admirable. The other thing, a couple of things that I'd mention is his leadership in the community, being able to get through COVID, leading on setting up testing sites and vac sites, leading with the efforts on behavioral health for the city's perspective. He's a nationally recognized wildfire fighter. He's really grown an amazing department, and given more than at least his wife Rhonda would like him to give for years of service to this profession. Chief Gear is a leader, a mentor, and a friend, and he will be very much missed as our fire chief. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Again, thank you, Chief. No further comment. We'll move on to our next item on the agenda. Chief Roski's not here. It's his favorite item. Executive session. We do have a need for executive session. A, consideration of site selection or acquisition of real estate, purchase or lease of light if likelihood that disclosure would increase price per RCW 42.30.1101B. And item B, discussion with legal counsel about legal risk of current or proposed action per RCW 42.30.1101I for 25 minutes, and we will be adding another 5 minutes for a short break. So a total of 30 minutes. Will return at 9:31. Thank you. It is 9:32 PM. We are still in executive session and there is a need to extend for another 10 minutes to return at 9:42. Thank you. It is 9:42, and with no further items on the agenda, this council meeting is adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.